This is The Brief on Newsfirst Digital.
A very good evening and welcome. This is The Brief at 7 on Newsfirst Digital. I'm Ramesh, Irugalbandara.
And I'm Serala, Fonseka. We'll start off with a look at your top story. A special meeting was chaired by Speaker Kharu Jayasuriya today on the Provincial Council polls.
The meeting brought together the Speaker of Parliament, Subject Minister Faisal Mustafa and the Chairman of the Elections Commission. A release issued by the Speaker's office noted that all parties at the meeting agreed that the Provincial Council election should be held without delay. We met with the Speaker of Parliament and the Subject Minister in charge of Provincial Councils and Local Government. Members of the Elections Commission and the Delimitation Commission were also present at the meeting. The meeting was about the Provincial Council election. Both the Speaker and the Minister stated that Parliament is doing their best to hold the election as soon as possible. The delimitation report is to be discussed in July during a party leaders meeting and a debate. As the Elections Commission, we hope to certify the electoral list by the 30th of September. We believe that, as the Speaker and Minister mentioned, all political parties in Parliament will come together to hold the election before the end of the year. We are currently laying the groundwork for this. The Eastern, North Central and Sabaragaon Provincial Councils have already been dissolved, while the Northern, Central and Northwestern Provincial Councils are to be dissolved by September.
While the Chairman of the Elections Commission and the Speaker of Parliament are getting ready for the Provincial Council election, former State Minister of Finance Lakshman Yapa Abeyewardene believes that the government should go in for a general election. He made these views during a media briefing held in Colombo today. Over the past 3.5 years, the national government has not managed the country's economy in a proper manner. I made this clear on a number of occasions when I was serving as the State Minister of Finance. If the authorities continue to manage the economy in this manner, the entire country will have to face dire consequences. We believe that a competent council should be appointed to manage the economy. Else, the government should go in for a general election. During this election, they need to tell the people how they hope to run the economy, what cutbacks they expect to make, and obtain a mandate from the public for their policies.
Issuing Sri Lanka's new development update report, the World Bank says Sri Lanka needs better jobs in order to reach upper middle income status.
If you go back to the debt, as we said, the portfolio, the composition is where the risks are. There are other challenges in debt management. For example, the legal framework is still fragmented, the debt management function is fragmented, and there's no quantitative strategy, and we hope that these reforms will accelerate in the future.
Many dream not only of working for the established big-name companies, but as self-starters who develop companies that actually they eventually sell to the big names. This buzz has not yet taken root in Sri Lanka, despite its middle-income status. What I hear most from young people here when I speak to them is that they are conditioned by their parental influence to become doctors and lawyers and then work in the public sector. But how many people can be absorbed in the public sector in these jobs? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong in being a lawyer or a doctor, knowing working in the public sector. The question I'm putting on the table is this the only future that our young can aspire for?
On to one of our developing stories now. The New York Times, in its article titled "How China Got Sri Lanka to Cough Up a Port," details how China's direct involvement in funding Sri Lankan elections and the stranglehold it has on the Sri Lankan economy. Now, yesterday we brought you details of the New York Times article and how China was funding the 2015 presidential campaign of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Tonight we bring you details of the details relating to the Hambantota report.
Quoting former Indian Foreign Secretary Shivashankar Menon, the New York Times said the government of President Mahinda Rajapaksa initially approached India for the port. But after its refusal, Rajapaksa later announced that China had agreed to get on board for the port. The first loan at $307 million had originally come at a variable rate that usually settled above 1 or 2%. For comparison, the New York Times says rates on similar Japanese loans for infrastructure projects run below 0.5%. The report in its investigation further reveals that in 2010, the president's 65th birthday was approaching, and to mark the occasion, he wanted a grand opening at the Hambantota port. Chinese laborers began working day and night to get the port ready, but when workers dredged the land and then flooded it to create the basin of the port, they had not taken into account a large boulder that partly blocked the entrance, preventing the entry of large ships. China Harbour blasted the boulder a year later at a cost of $40 million. Determined to keep expanding the port, President Mahinda Rajapaksa went back to the Chinese government in 2012 asking for $757 million. The Chinese agreed again, but this time the terms were much steeper. But to secure fresh funding, that initial loan was renegotiated to a much higher 6.3% fixed rate. Rajapaksa acquiesced. Under Rajapaksa, the country's debt had increased threefold to $44.8 billion when he left office. And for 2015 alone, a $4.68 billion payment was due at the year's end. The central bank estimated that Sri Lanka owed China about $3 billion last year. Economists estimated that debt owed to China could be as much as $5 billion and was growing every year. In May, Sri Lanka took a new $1 billion loan from China Development Bank to help its coming debt payment. While Sri Lanka had fallen into a deeper debt trap, the new government signed an agreement to lease the Hambantota port to China for a period of 99 years in December last year.
Tune in to Primetime News at 9 p.m. on TV1 for further developments on this New York Times article.
30 human skeletons and bone fragments have been unearthed in the Mannar town. Professor of Archaeology at the Postgraduate Institute of Archaeology of the University of Kelaniya, Professor Raj Somadeva said they cannot comment on the discovery yet. A bone fragment was discovered last year during a drilling operation for the construction of the Sathosa building in Mannar. The person who discovered the bone fragment had then lodged a complaint with the police. The construction of the building was suspended after police informed court of the findings of their investigations. Subsequently, a team of archaeologists and judicial medical officers began excavating the site after obtaining a court order from the Mannar Magistrate Court. It has been 22 days since the excavation began.
On to news overseas now. More than 200 people were killed last weekend in central Nigeria's Plateau state. By late Sunday, residents from more than 3 communities were reported to have died in clashes between farmers and semi-nomadic herders over dwindling fertile land.
Authorities imposed a dusk to dawn curfew in central Plateau state after the fighting and escalation of clashes that have raged for years. Visiting the state on Tuesday, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari said herders arrested in possession of AK-47 guns should be prosecuted. According to Reuters calculations, the violence in Nigeria's diverse Middle Belt states has now killed more people than Islamist insurgency in Nigeria's northeast.
And finally, naval vessels from over 25 countries have begun arriving at the U.S. joint base of Pearl Harbor Hickam in Hawaii for the start of BRIMPAC 2018, the world's largest international maritime exercise.
Countries participating will have sent more than 45 ships and submarines, 200 aircraft and 25 military personnel to participate in the exercise that takes place from the 27th of June to the 2nd of August in and around Southern California and the Hawaiian Islands. BRIMPAC provides a cross-country training opportunity while fostering and sustaining cooperative relationships among participants, critical to ensuring the safety of the sea lanes and security of the world's oceans. BRIMPAC 2018 is the 26th exercise in the series that began in 1971.
And that's a wrap of the brief at 7 for News First Digital. As always, send in your thoughts on the contents that were aired tonight through the comments section below. I'm Ramesh Irugalbandara.
And I'm Serala Fonseka. Good night.